A while back in 2020, yeah, 2020, so it's most likely a blur, I made a top 10 list of the best video game remakes of all time. I'd say the list kinda still holds up, with the only thing being that, well, it's been 3 years and many more remakes have come out since, and that's what I'm counting down today. Now, these are specifically remakes, games that are rebuilt from the ground up, so I won't be including any remasters, which means, for example, and it pains me to say this, but no Metroid Prime Remastered, unfortunately. I really wanted to include it despite the name because it does feel like it's in the middle of a remake and a remaster. I'm like 90% sure about all these games being 100% remakes. So I guess Metroid Prime Remastered can be the unofficial number 11 spot. Also, if you're wondering why certain games like the Resident Evil remake, the Resident Evil 2 remake, the Final Fantasy 7 remake, Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, etc. are not on this list, go watch the other list. Although the video kinda sucks, didn't have a good mic, and I left in a lot of pauses, so there's a lot of awkward dead air, but like, you can skim through it and see what the list is, and then go back here. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. But before we do that, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell, leave a comment, or I will reboot you from the ground up. Whatever that means. You don't want to find out.
I wanted to give to you, the last part of your notes here, the significance spiritually of the number 10 in the Bible.
Remember when Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was announced and it kind of revived Crash? Well, I remember people clamoring for Spyro to get that same treatment, and he did with Spyro Reignited Trilogy. The Spyro Reignited Trilogy is a straight-up remake of the first 3 Spyro games, all on one disc. And yeah, this might seem like a remastered collection, but the 3 games were made from the ground up, and they look better than ever. While the original Spyro PS1 trilogy has held up, I'll say better than a good chunk of games from that era, the Reignited trilogy brings a new feel and look to the games that were much needed. Not to mention, Spyro has always had some fire music, and the new renditions sound amazing. Needless to say, Spyro the Dragon Reignited trilogy accomplished its goal in not only remaking Spyro for modernized gaming, but also making the Spyro series relevant again. Now, can we just get a new Spyro game after Activision fully joins Microsoft, so I give money to Microsoft and not Activision? Because that'll be great. Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, Elden Ring, all of which are From Software's Soulsborne games and have kind of been taking the world by storm for, I want to say, the past 10 years. However, Dark Souls isn't the game to put From Software on the map. In fact, Dark Souls is a spiritual successor to another From Software game that actually started the whole Soulsborne genre, and that is Demon Souls. And in 2020, as a launch title for the PS5, it got a remake, and it is awesome. I'd say what the Demon Souls remake showcases best is the visuals. While the PS3 Demon Souls didn't look that bad for the generation, Demon Souls for the PS5 makes the PS3 game look like a poorly aged PS1 game in comparison. As for the actual game, it is a very faithful remake with nothing really changed, almost to a fault, but sometimes all a game really needs is just a facelift. And while some issues with the original game carry over, Demon Souls is now a beautiful looking but still tough as nails Soulsborne game with a much needed fresh coat of paint.
So I'm going to be giving this flavor 8.5 out of 10 scoops.
Sometimes a game needs a remake because it hasn't aged too well. Other times a game needs a remake just to make the game relevant again or restore good faith in the franchise. However, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 is an example of both. At the time, the original 2 Pro Skater games, or at least the first one, were kind of starting to show their age. In addition, the franchise was in a bit of limbo after the disaster that was Pro Skater 5. We don't talk about that one. However, the 1 and 2 Remake reiterated why it was just so fun skating around as Tony Hawk and his skater buddies. Everything, every little trick and maneuver you can pull off in this game just feels very good now. And the soundtrack, which was one of the most beloved things from the original Pro Skater games, is now back in all its glory. Needless to say that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 was a much needed remake for two games that are beloved by many, that show their age, along with the franchise being in a bit of limbo. Now, if we can get a remake of 3 and 4 uncancelled after Activision joins Microsoft, that would be great.
36.
Very close, but that's not it. Let's go to Gary the Retard. What number between 2 and 4?
When the Wii Shop channel happened, many companies put games on there under the WiiWare brand. Unfortunately, the Wii Shop channel has ended service, and it makes recommending this game pretty difficult, but Konami, before they liked pachinko machines, made video games. In fact, they respected their IPs to the point where they released remakes of Contra and Gradius respectively as WiiWare games known under the Rebirth series. However, the strangest game to get that treatment was Castlevania The Adventure, but it ended up being the best one. Castlevania The Adventure is a Game Boy game that, well, has not aged too well, and even then, nobody really cared about it. It's not good. So that being said, it might seem strange to remake that game instead of maybe the original Castlevania, but the problems with the Game Boy game, like the speed of our main character and everything being a little too close up, are not present in Rebirth. Needless to say, Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth took a game that is mediocre at best and made it one of the best Castlevania games. On top of that, this game is really Castlevania The Adventure in name, story, and characters only, as the game itself, such as the levels and mechanics, make the game feel like an entirely new experience. All that makes Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth a game that would be easier for me to recommend if it was still available.
Okay, Mrs. Puff, what's my final score?
6. Woo! Let's go back to what is perhaps one of the earliest examples of a remake, Super Mario AllStars. I'm honestly surprised I didn't include this on my list from a few years ago. Super Mario AllStars is a remake collection of Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3, along with the Japanese version of Super Mario Bros. 2 that Nintendo thought was too difficult for Western audiences. Renamed Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, it is now more visually distinct from the original Super Mario Bros. 2, and is actually playable now. Along with that, the other three games are given a fantastic looking facelift. While the NES versions of Super Mario Bros. 2 and especially 3 have aged decently well, this version of Super Mario Bros. 1 is the correct way to go. And even then, 2 and 3 are pretty damn cool here too. I've actually been told that this is the best version of Super Mario Bros. 3. Needless to say, this is a phenomenal way to play some of the most iconic and greatest platformers of all time and the Lost Levels, and it's no wonder why Super Mario All-Stars often comes up in conversations of the best NES games and maybe even the best Mario games.
Oh, chills. Literal chills.
It was number 5. Number 5 killed my brother.
Oh my god.
One game I don't really ever hear get brought up in conversations about the best remakes of all time is DuckTales Remastered. And the reason why is probably right there. Remastered. However, have you played this game? Because if you have, that title is a lie. In fact, I'm willing to say that DuckTales Remastered is more of a remake than Demon's Souls, Tony Hawk, and Spyro. Yup, DuckTales Remastered takes the NES DuckTales game, one of the best NES games, one of the best Disney games, and one of the best licensed games of all time, arguably didn't even need a remake, and turns it into a Metroidvania, with an all-new UI, interactions between characters, and new renditions of the music, including, of course, that moon theme, which sounds absolutely beautiful. And as for the gameplay, well, it just feels like the original DuckTales for NES, except modernized to feel like a modern game. Literally, the only difference in the gameplay is that the NES version, you're an NES game, and in Remastered, you're playing a newer game. I was unsure whether or not to include Metroid Prime Remastered, like I said earlier, because while it is called Metroid Prime Remastered, I'd actually say it blurs the line between Remake and Remastered, but I wasn't too certain to include it. DuckTales Remastered, however, despite the name, is without question a remake, and a delightful one at that. When Dead Space came out, there was truly nothing else quite like it. We've seen many survival horror games in space since, and while Dead Space might not have been the first one to do it, it was the first one to nail it. Dead Space 2 came out, and it was arguably even more scary than the first one, and then 3 happened, and that's all I'm willing to talk about that one. However, Dead Space hasn't been doing much lately after 3, and the franchise has been a bit of limbo. However, I'd say the future of Dead Space looks bright, even though it's a pretty dark game, but it looks bright after this year's Dead Space remake. To be fair, the Dead Space remake doesn't really change a whole lot from the original game. The stuff it does change, it changes very well. Stuff like the visuals, making this game look incredible, and all the creatures look all the more terrifying. That, and at least playing on PS5, the rumble features with the controller, they really come into play in this game. But mostly, this is more or less the same as the original Dead Space, but built from the ground up. But sometimes, you don't need to fix what isn't broken. Dead Space deserved a remake because Dead Space needed to come back. This game does a great job reminding us why Dead Space was so good and so terrifying. Because of this Dead Space remake, Dead Space is back. And that's all you can really ask for, really. Aside from, you know, maybe a new Dead Space game. Remember when I said that Super Mario AllStars is probably one of the earliest examples of a remake? Well, not too long after, there was Mega Man The Wily Wars, a remake for the Sega Genesis of the first 3 Mega Man games that never had a proper release here in North America until it was on the Sega Genesis Mini, and then it got re-released by Limited Run Games, and then it went on the Nintendo Switch Online, which you can argue that none of those are proper releases. But man, it is spectacular. Like I said earlier, Mega Man The Wily Wars takes the first 3 Mega Man games, remakes them from the ground up for the Genesis, and now they play like Sega Genesis games, but still feel like Mega Man. On top of that, they added a story to the game, despite it being kind of a remake collection of the first 3 games. Dr. Wily goes back in time and forces Mega Man to play through the events of Mega Man 1, 2, and 3. Again, giving us an explanation for why we are playing the first 3 games again, which is very cool. It's not something I would have cared about, but I just like this story detail as to why we're playing the 3 games again. On top of that, there is also Wily Tower, which you get when beating the 3 games. So this is actually a lot more than just a remake collection. I don't see this game get brought up too much in discussions for the best remakes of all time, but it is up there. I think it is also up there with one of the best Genesis games and one of the best Mega Man games. This isn't my preferred way to play Mega Man 2. I don't think anything beats that original NES experience, but you know what? It might be my favorite way to play 1 and 3. And that says something.
Pencil do we take again?
Number 2. Take a number 2.
Looks like you took a big number 2.
Since we are on the subject of remake collections, how can you ignore Mass Effect Legendary Edition? The answer is, you can't! I really believe that Mass Effect, even considering its blunder of an ending, is a top 3 greatest video game trilogies of all time. However, it was stuck on PS3 and Xbox 360 for a while, and while they haven't aged horribly, a lot of games from that era haven't aged tremendously well. So, Mass Effect Legendary Edition comes in and reworks the 3 games. Mass Effect 1 in particular is way better now, and it was already great, and 2 and 3 didn't really have much wrong with them to begin with, so no need to patch things up that's not broken. Not to mention, it brings back all the DLC, connects the 3 games and decisions you make, and it looks very nice. Now, you guys might have already commented that Mass Effect Legendary Edition was approached as a remaster as opposed to a remake, and from the research I did, it seems like I can only find stuff that says that this is a remaster, not a remake, but I call bullshit. Look at the way they redid at least the first game, and tell me that's a simple remaster. Tell me that to my face, and you'll be wrong.
I'm a Luigi, number 1.
All these games on this list were games that I knew about. Maybe I didn't play them all before the remake came out, but I was familiar with them. When the Live Alive remake was announced, that was the first I've heard of this game, and that's because this was the first time Live Alive was being released outside of Japan. So it was a brand new game to me, and goddamn, it is a goddamn masterpiece. First off, using the 2D HD art style that Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy used was a perfect aesthetic choice. On top of that, the idea of having 8 stories, almost like their own little short games, is very neat, and they all differ. One of them is almost like a fighting game, one of them takes place in the Wild West, one is basically all text-based and story-focused, one ends with a kaiju fight, one turns into a fucking horror game. It's like, goddamn. Live Alive is one of few RPGs that I think I can recommend to non-RPG fans. This is truly something unique, and this remake is the only official way to play this game in North America. It touches many bases, an RPG unlike any other, and as a remake, does a perfect job making a game presentable, accessible, and spectacular. And that's why it comes in at number 1. That was my list. Again, some obvious games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, Resident Evil 2 Remake, they're on the other list. But yeah, that was my list. You guys agree with me? If you haven't watched the other list, it's going to be hard to say you agree with me, because obviously some games are missing. But what are some of your favorite video game remakes? I want to throw in games like the Metroid Prime Remaster, Crisis Core Reunion, or Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, all games I considered for this list, but they're just considered remasters. I didn't feel right including them, and it was a little too late once I realized Mass Effect Legendary Edition was considered a remaster, but I still don't believe that. I don't believe that. But anyways, comment below what are some of your favorite video game remakes. Anyways, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, or I will reboot you from the ground up. Bye!